Welcome to the Belfry Hockey Podcast. I'm Daryl Belfry. We're going to go into Season 3, Episode 4 today, which is personal structure. We've done the first two legs of these four-part series of different types of practice structures that I think are important to review and are somewhat under-talked about, I would suspect. And so, but these are key tenets to what I think is important in player development. So, with that being said, this is the third section of it, which is now personal structure. Now, personal structure is something again it goes on all the time. Every good player has a personal structure, and they a lot of times come up with it themselves. Um, Many times they see something, they have a favorite player that they're emulating, they have YouTube that they're going through, and then they come on the ice, and in the practice they're finding ways or opportunities to look for those situations or manufacture those situations in which they could get more practice in that particular skill set or tactical aspect that they'd like to be better with. And so you'll see these things go on, and every team might have one, maybe two guys that are actively doing this, and a really good team would have many more because that top player tries to pull that out of other players and shows great leadership, which is what we'll talk about in the next episode. But it all starts with an individual player having a purpose and an understanding of what it is that they want to do. And you, as a coach or a skill instructor, you have an opportunity to become that voice of and influence what it is that is on their mind. And one of the best ways to do that is to have a plan for that player. And many people tell me they have plans for players, but when you really go and watch the team practice or you watch how they work with the players, there really isn't a relationship between what they might tell you that they have as a plan for the player, what they think that player should be getting better at, and then what is actually going on the ice. Like what is the progression of ideas and concepts and skills and techniques? What does that look like? And does that match what the objectives are? And there's often many disconnects as it relates to that. And so players don't really have an undercurrent of their own individual development that's being factored into the team environment. So they're just going through drills. They go through drills, they have fun, they enjoy what they do, they have a few shots, but there's nothing there that's really advancing their actual personal development plan as it relates to becoming more important for the team, maybe learning to be more effective in certain areas of the team structure where they could be much better, and then also in their own personal development path of key aspects that would be important for the next level of their development, could be even just the next year of their development. When you watch what goes on in practice, there really isn't, you couldn't draw any relationship between what's going on there and what is going to make this player better after the day. And there's some ancillary skills that they're picking up, but as it relates to what you would describe or define as an individual player development plan, there really isn't much that you could draw back to that. So for me, when I was watching this and I would go through it, I was doing the same thing. Like I would go through and someone would say, hey, like, what do you think of Johnny? And I'd say, well, he's a good, big, strong player. He could probably work on his foot speed, and we're going to try to find a way to get him faster. And I think if once he gets faster, he'll be able to get on pucks more, he'll be able to get in the play quicker, yada, yada, yada. And I would have all this stuff, and that sounds like a good plan, right? Then we get to practice, and I'm running the practice and I'm doing all the drills, but at no point am I incorporating anything that relates to specific foot speed or development that would be important for Johnny. And even when Johnny's in competitive situations that require him to win a foot race or etc., I'm really offering nothing. All I'm doing is giving him maybe another situation in which he can lose. And so then the snowball just keeps going and never really solves a problem. So I didn't really realize that that was going on. I just thought, hey, you go, you run practice, and if you rise all the water, well then all the boats get better, right? Like that's what I was thinking, and I've come to realize that that's just not the case. That there are kids that get lost in the shuffle because there really isn't a personal development plan for them, and so it became really obvious at different times in my own personal development that I really needed to figure this out. So one of the situations that happened to me was I was in a small group situation, and I was trying to run the small group, and I was in my mind trying to make decisions as to what to incorporate. So I remember thinking the group was like 5 kids, and I remember thinking, okay, like I'm gonna do the first couple of drills for these kids because that's kind of common of what I think they might need, and then I'm gonna do another drill that is not necessarily for them, but it would be good for this player, and then I'm going to do another drill that's good for the 5th player. So the guy's going to be there for 50 minutes, and I'm going to do one drill that's directly related to that player. And I remember thinking, like, man, that's a lot. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, how can I not be better at this? Like, I remember leaving the ice session saying, like, I'm like, what am I like? I'm no good at this. Like, I'm genuinely no good at player development. Like, if I can't have 5 kids and I can't run 50 minutes and find a way to make it important for each of those kids where each one of them can get benefit, like, what the hell am I doing? And then I started to sit down, pen to paper, and go, okay, given the structure of what you had today, what are you going to do? Like, what can you do better? Like, what you did is no good. That we know for sure. So now we need to say, okay, let's first let's take a look at each individual player. Let's take 3 things that we know each one of them needs to work on. So I go and I list all 3 things. So out of those things, they have 15 items. Now some of them are common, right? So amongst each of those players, we might have 2 or 3 things that are common amongst most of them, but when you really look at the list, there's really 5 players, 3 items, that's 15 total. There's some commonality. I'm really looking at like 9 things that are unique. So I have to come up with a structure that I could have each of those 8 or 9 aspects that I could have integrated into what we're doing at some point in the practice, and that it would come at a natural, logical time. So that was the other part. Like, can I get this so that also what's important to the player comes at the right time, that it's a natural, logical progression from what we were then working on. So I'm starting to like put these items on a list, figure out the commonalities, then I put them in a progression, say, okay, like if I was to do this, just these 9 things, what would that progression look like? Like what kind of things would that, what kind of things, like what order should these go in? And how does one thing link to another? And can I knock a couple of items off the list kind of at once? Is there one thing that lends itself to another? I mean, these were the things that were swirling around in my head of how to make this ice session for these 5 players more valuable for each one of them. And that when each one of them left, that I had made a concerted effort to improve as many of these items on the list as I could. And each player only had 3. So how do I, like, if you can't get 3 items and I can't build something that works for them for each of those 3 items that they're going to get benefit out of it, and I got to get reps in. So that's what was so frustrating about the original problem was I give a guy one drill, it's 10 minutes. By the time I set it up, time I get it going, I explain it, demonstrate it, we get going, we give them the reps. By the time that's all done, I mean, does he get 8 or 10 reps? Maybe 10, 12 reps. if I'm lucky. So he goes the entire practice. He has ancillary values. There's like, it's not that there's no value. Of course, there's value, but I mean specific value to this individual kid, where we're really hitting the areas that he needs to definitely get better in. I'm hitting him with 10 reps for 50 minutes. What is he like the rest of the? What are we doing? And so that's what was so frustrating for me, was I had to figure this out of how I could start to, I called it stitching. How can I stitch each individual kid's his development into the drills in a progression that allowed him to really build some momentum and feel like this was a real valuable session. And sometimes, like again, and don't get me wrong, like sometimes what the player needs to work on most at that time is a strength. It's not even like we're not working always on weaknesses. We're working on a strength sometimes. And so that's the other factor, is like when I was coming up with my list, I remember the first couple of times I came up with lists for players, it was all negative lists. Like it was all deficit lists. He's no good at this, he's no good at that, he's no good at this, no good at that. That's my list. I'm like, yeah, I know, but like that's not always the thing that's going to make him a better player. It's going to make, what's going to make him a better player and more valuable for the next level is actually improving his strengths. And then we gradually pick up these other aspects as we go and make him stronger at these other areas. But I got to focus on his strengths and try to make his strengths even better. So then I had to revise the list, of course, and this is going over years, like a couple of years of time. This isn't a one-time exercise. I'm like, there's no books to figure this out. Like you gotta, it's all like I have a question in my head, I gotta try to figure it out, and these are the quandaries that I'm going on, and this is part of my process. So I want to take you kind of through my mental gymnastics that I'm trying to do to figure out how I can become a better instructor and incorporate their individual needs into it. So I start off with the list. Then I put the list in an order of priority. Then I start pairing things together where I could see where two aspects could dovetail together. One would work well with the other. And then I got to the drill design. And the drill design was like, it had to be nothing like I would normally do. So normally when I would do a drill design, it was about the drill. And in this case, when it was about the player, individual player, and incorporating it in, I had to come up with like phases of the drill execution. So oftentimes when I was designing the drill and the drills became really effective, there were like 2-3 parts to the drill. So it would be like, we're gonna go here in this corner for this, and then you're gonna go to that corner for that, and then you're gonna jump in the rush for that. And so it goes one side, other side, out, and there's 3 different aspects that we're gonna work on. And as we do each of those 3 things, we're gonna pick up these items as we go. And then I would run like loops. So what it would be like you would go in one side, other side, out, and each one of them had a different focus. So it was like, quick feet with pivot, transition, skating, couple puck touches. So there's like 3-4 seconds there. Now puck goes in the other corner. Now we get to the other corner. Now it's like retrieval under pressure. So now there's somebody on me. I gotta read the stick, body position, win a puck line. It's more like a loose puck battle, loose puck race. So I do that. I make an exit, and now boom, we're joining the rush. Now once we get in the rush, now I gotta get getting the dot line. Once we get the dot line, there's like the manipulation of space on entry, creating like little 2-on-1s, the timing of the line. So these are like 3 elements of it, right? And then it would join, and then it would finish with a shot. And the shot could be a major part of it as well, where I want the shot off the pass. I want it. I would have rules, engagement rules. So it's got to be a shot off the pass, and it's got to be a strong side catch and shoot. Because 3 players in our group, they're much better with their one timer than they are with a catch and shoot. So let's have that there. So what I started to build was these phases. So to start off as phases, there's 3 parts to the drill. Each part would have like rules of engagement, like what I was talking about, like strong side, or I want the pressure to come immediately. I want 2 on it, or I want one on it, and then 1 with. So there'd be like the first guy that gets there, he's the bucket. The second guy is pressure. And there'd be like these rules of the drill. So they didn't know what was going to happen until kind of it happened, but there was like rules of who's going to do what. And then when the exit came and then they started to come out, okay, like this is how we want the entry to work, and these are the elements that we want the entry, and then when you shoot, there's rules that apply. So phases and rules. So that was good, and that got me the reps I wanted. And then I would loop it. So now after that play happened, then there would be a group that would go to bring the play back, but then when it was their turn, like then they would go again, but then I would change the order. For example, I would say, okay, now it starts off this way and goes out. So I was trying to create these like really dynamic drills that were phases and rules, and then loop it. And that was a big part of my evolution in my drill design, and I had to often make a lot of adjustments on the fly because the timing wasn't right or whatever, and you learn really fast how to be much better with drill design. So that was one aspect of it. So the first part is I need to know what each player needs to work on. So that becomes a whole other thing. So how are you actually assessing each player? What is it that is driving what you're working on at that given time? So there's kind of multiple different motivations given where you are in the season. So initially, your objectives as a coach might be team-oriented in the sense of we got to get this guy plugged in to how we want to play. He doesn't skate hard enough. He's not hard enough on pucks. Doesn't protect pucks enough. He doesn't shoot well off the pass. Isn't very good with his ability to take pucks away. Isn't physical enough. Doesn't win puck lines. Those are all, maybe it could be wall play. These are like areas of the game where he needs to become better to become a better teammate in the grand scheme of the execution of the team objectives. Okay, fair enough. So that's how it starts, and the development of the player becomes almost exclusively about that. Then at a different time, it starts to switch where I'm preparing this player for the next level. So he is a major bantam, and next year he's going to be minor midget. So he needs to be, and the way my mind always thought was, I don't want you to be a minor midget player when you go to minor midget. I want you to be a minor midget player as you're leaving bantam. So you're already a minor midget player when you leave here. So you can, and so understanding, understanding what does a minor midget player, what's he going to need to do to be effective as a minor midget player, that had to factor into my development so that when he left here, he could skate at that level, he could make plays at that level, he could handle contact against players at that size, speed, all that stuff. So it's the preparation process for whatever that next level might be. That's a really important aspect. And so as the season goes along, the goals and objectives of the athlete change because you're trying to prepare them for what's important for the next year. And so initially it becomes all about your team, You build them to become better at the things they need to be better at your team, and then you have an eye for the future. I'm going to pass this guy on to the next level, and when I do, I want to have him equipped where he's the best possible player that he can be. And some of those pieces are identity oriented, that he's playing to his strengths, and his strengths are strong enough to be still strengths when he goes to the next level. Sometimes it's weaknesses, like there's a glaring error, a glaring hole in the skill gap, and I got to fill that gap in so that he can go right through and be able to acquire other skills. Because often the problem with a skill gap is it's precluding to learning. You can't learn other skills because every time you go, the skill execution falls short in that hole that you have in your development. So we have to fill that in so that you can get to the next level. So that was another factor into the development process of how I was stitching this whole thing together with the players. And I think that that's really important. And like I said, if you don't do it, well, then you're going to see the player do it on their own. So the next piece was one of the things that I started when I started work with more teams was I want to incorporate each individual player's development into a team in session. So can I get each individual player's objectives spoken for inside of this team driven practice or event? And that became like my holy grail, and I just worked tirelessly to try to figure out how I could do that. Some of it was personal touch inside the practice. So one of the biggest problems I was having as I was learning how to do this was I've realized I was running too many drills, and I didn't have enough drills that ran themselves. I didn't have enough, even games I was running, I didn't have enough that ran themselves. I was still running the game. And I started to learn that what was most important was I needed to be able to get things going, and then it needed to run itself. And that's where loops become really important, that you don't need a whistle for a new whistle for the next guy to go. Like there's a loop, and the loop gets connected by the last play. So if you could think of like the principles that surround drill design on a continuous 2-on-2, what do? Well, you have one of two ways you're going to do it. You're either going to put a bunch of pucks behind the net, and you're going to say, okay, the shot's taken on the 2-on-2. As soon as the shot's taken, the D who were on the rush defending, you're going to go pick up a puck behind the net. You might make some kind of a play with each other, and then you're going to hit the next two guys that came in, and that's what's going to set the play the other way. That's a loop. It's a way in which you connect things to make the play go the opposite direction, or keep it moving. So I just took that idea of looping, and I built it into everything. Every drill that I had, every game that I had some kind of a way in which it was a loop. And that loop was what allowed me to step out of running the drill or the game. And that freed me to then get in the lines. And my assistants were in the lines, and they start talking to players about their individual habits, skills, their development path that we're on, and how, as this drill is going, what aspects that they are thinking about. So first start asking questions. Hey, what's this drill look like for you? And then the player's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, I feel like there's skating, or I feel like I can work on some change of speed here. I feel like I can work on my shot, whatever the case may be, whatever. And then there's a short engagement. And then for me, I think it's this, and then you start focusing and refocusing, and then, you're creating, player goes, then there's reflection, you go in, you ask another question, and then things start going. Now there's this like whole dialogue that's going on, and I'm having all these dialogues throughout the entire practice and the entire drill. Well, that was liberating. So when I stopped running the drill and I had loops, and I kept the loops going, and I got more sophisticated on how I built the loops, then it became much easier. So drill design, I think, doesn't get enough like there's no one tells you how to build the drill. It's like you have to have a good mentor who tells you how to build a drill, and then maybe you can figure things out, or you have to figure it out on your own. But there's really not a lot of information out there about how to actually design a drill and how to build some of these things in that are really important, like what I was talking about, and how important it is for the coach to get out of the drill and into the teaching. And I think that that's a key piece. Um, when you hear people talk about coaching now, you hear them say, "Well, my best move is to get out and get away, and not coach." And that to me is not true. Your job is to get away from the structure of the drill and get into teaching skill and talking and dialogue about reflection of skill. And so players are getting more ideas about how they can apply the the situation differently and what other options there might be, and that there's a true excitement about the expression of either their talent into what they're doing, or how they can do things differently, and that there's excitement in the variability of options. That to me is what's important. And that became a major part of my focus. So so I started to get going down this path, and one of the things that started to trip me up was not every player is not every player do I have an equal relationship with, and not every player that I'm on the ice with is as open in the dialogue. Not every player also has the same level of sophistication in their understanding of their own game. They have no idea what they do. They just hey, I just do what I do. That's what it is. They don't really know what they do. And then there's other players who know everything about what they do. They're very calculated about what they do. So I'm like, okay, I'm starting to, and my personality puts me in a spot where I start gravitating towards the kids who are more open to talk about their game, and they understand things better, because then I can have greater influence. And of course, the poor kid who's not at that level of understanding and sophistication, or maybe they are, but they don't have the level of, they don't have the vocabulary or the ability to they're not able to express it in a way that, it's awkward for them to express it. So now I'm stuck, because I'm still not really at that holy grail. I'm not really able to incorporate every kid, because I still am gravitating towards kids, and my best work is done with the players who are the most engaging. And that's not right. That can't be. So that's where my communication skills had to improve, because I was like, I have to do a better job before I even get on the ice. I got to do a better job before we start. I have to know the player better, so I had to do more research on each player to know exactly what they need to work on. But more than just knowing, and more than just providing a space to grow, I needed to have a communication with them. I needed to be able to articulate it with them. So sometimes it's hey, watch this video. It's 3 clips of them in a maybe defensive zone, having to make a play under pressure, whatever it is. Maybe it's center support, maybe it's D, having to go back and win a puck line, or read the speed that's needed. Sometimes the player goes too fast, making sure that they know how fast to go. That could be whatever it is that player's working. It doesn't matter what it is. So you send them 2 or 3 clips on what, hey, these types of things are going to come up next practice. Boom. Now I have started. And maybe I send a text to go with that. Hey, pay attention to this. Looking forward to it. Whatever. Then I would also, as part of that, I would then open that dialogue. That would be the first thing as I started to see the players that next day. So when I got to the rink and I see the player, hey, did you see your video? Yeah, and some players say, "No, I didn't watch it." So I'm like, "Okay, now that's problem number one, right?" So when I send you something, I'm going to need you to watch it. So then we start, that process. That's relationship building in of itself. So I'm not like one of the things that I've learned over the years, and I think it's more my personality than anything else. I'm not really good with the small talk with players. I know that there's a lot of studies that have been done that talk about building relationships with players where it gets more on a personal side. You sit there, you talk to them about how their day was at school, you talk to them about things that are going on at home or with their family or other interests that they might have. I'm not good with that stuff, and because I'm not good with that, I don't have it doesn't translate very well for me as it relates to relationship building. Now for some people I think that it does. For me it for sure does not. My relationship building with players comes from the creation of improved results for them on the ice. That's it. If the player can take something, the player knows that I can help them and I do help them and they get better and they can trace that back to me, relationship has improved. The player's on the ice with me and they don't see that, then the relationship is degrading. That's how I view it. So everything for me is about what's going on the ice. So all of my relationship building is focused on that. It's all about achieving a greater result, and the relationship comes from the player's trust in me, and trust is built through positive results. That's how I view it. And that's what my focus is. So when I talk about relationship building, it's about when he comes to me on Tuesday, I've done the work before he got there. Once the player gets there and gets on the ice, I've also done the work before to talk about the different pieces that we're going to work on. Then when we go on the ice, I'm creating recall of based on video that I sent and the player's own understanding of their game, because hopefully I've also been able to communicate with the player about their own individual game and say, hey, here's how I view it. How do you view your game? Where do you think you need to be? What are you trying to work on? Etc. We start to kind of come together on a plan. Now when we hit that ice, all those pieces are in place. I can't even tell you how important that is and how much of that was a major breakthrough for me, because I'm not like, so I'm kind of socially awkward. Like I'm not really that guy. I don't do very well with small talk. I don't really have a lot of other interests where like I'm basically 100% on hockey. So I'm not able to talk about other things that well. So it's not really a strength of mine where other people are really good at that stuff. My strength is in the hockey. So when I'm building a relationship, it has to be there. And I recognize that. So, and this is where kind of like my personal structure is also the coach. It's your personal process. And how does that personal process apply to the player? So when we're having this podcast number 4, personal structure, what you will notice when you've gotten to this point is I'm talking about two things at the same time. I'm talking about me and my personal development as a coach to learn how to understand what I do and what my strengths are so that I can apply that better and more consistently to produce better results. But I'm also trying to also understand the personal structure of the player and incorporate how we can build that piece much more effectively into what we're doing. So two things coming together at the same time. So the last item that's really important for us to discuss as part of personal structure is the last piece that really put this into another stratosphere, and that is educating the player on personal habits, practice habits, what the personal practice habits are. So each player on my ice should be able to evaluate every drill that we do, every game that we do. They should be able to take one look and already be looking for where the pieces are inside, or the elements, the phases, the loops, whatever, that they can impose their own development and look for where that development might be. So it could be, oh, like we're getting a pass. So let's say it's D. It's a simple breakout drill. Could be continuous, breakout drill, whatever it is. Puck goes in. D goes and gets it. Goes D to do his partner. Partner passes to the middle. Maybe that's what it is. So my 1D, he needs to be better underhandling. Every time he comes around the net, he's chopping it up, and then it really affects his accuracy. So be quiet. Come around the net, get the puck on your forehand quickly, get your eyes up, hands up, make sure you make a good pass. Next guy, he doesn't have any problems with that. So I don't need to talk to him about underhandling. Actually, his problem is he telegraphs everything. He comes around, he's staring at the centerman the whole time. No. Look at the center, make sure you know where he is. No, make sure you know what hand he is. Now look at the winger when you come around, and then come back to the center and execute the pass. So create a little deception. Maybe use your hands a little differently to sell it. Add some layers to that deception. So we have a simple breakout pass, 2 players coming around. Now we might have 6 or 8 in the line, 4 in one end, 4 in another. You have 8 guys. Each guy might be doing things differently. One guy, hey, I need to play with more urgency. Like, I got to be faster. So this guy, he's looking to, he, instead of standing there, waiting for his turn, he jumps out into the circle, he backpedals, he pivots, and so now, bang, he's accelerating, Another guy's I need a retrieval kind of play here as well as part of my breakout sequence. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out in the circle, and then when it's my turn, I'm going to just kind of lay it in the corner for myself. Then I'm going to go in and go through my retrieval habits, and now I'm going to go. And I'm going to use the net as part of my retrieval habits, learn how to use the net, and then ultimately execute the play. Every one of those 8 guys, there's lots of things that they can be working on. But as a coach, and for me, what was really important was teaching them how to look at it. So once they were able to see what the drill was, that they could then articulate it back to me as to what it was that they're working on. So when I went to them, once I got it going and I got the loops going, now I could go to the line and say, hey, what do you see here? Oh, this is perfect for me. I'm going to do this. Boom. Great. Then we go to the next drill. Hey, what do you see here? And then they start stitching it together in their own mind. That's really important. So we have a few pieces here that's important to stitch together. There's me, the coach. I got to figure out a better way of designing the drills more effectively. I got to learn how to impose the way in which I want the drill to run and the games to run. I got to figure out how to get that going and then get out of it and start teaching in the lines. Once I'm in the lines, I have to have done the work beforehand, before we got there, so that I'm creating relevant discussion with these athletes on what's going on. Once we're in it and they're going on, that they can articulate to me what it is that they're doing. So now we have a structure that has so many layers to it. And we're always looking for, all these elements to make it more random and have the game do a lot of the teaching. And for me, it's been a lot of this other stuff. Creating a personal structure, it just creates a lot of rich, dynamic development that is going on with each player as the game or the practice is playing itself out. And I had to learn how to design my games more effectively and design my practice, because I don't just do games. I have different drills that lead me in there. I do things in a sequence, and trying to incorporate everyone's development was a major part of that. And that's always been something that I tried to figure out how to be better with, but never, and trying to reach that holy grail of when I step off that ice, that every single player, as part of the practice, was not only able to accomplish the team goals because the practice is built a certain way for a team or a group objective, but then also that they could find and I could provide the space for them to be able to work on their individual game structure as well. So not only are they getting better, but the team is also benefiting from them getting better, and it's all done inside the team structure. That's the holy grail, and that's what I was fighting for. And it took years and years and years to go through this process that I'm describing, but that's really where I'm at, and that's the type of things that I'm really focused on now, is trying to become even better and have the drill design become even more effective. Because don't forget, I don't do a lot of drill design beforehand in terms of, like, I like to have a dynamic practice. So my process is dynamic practice for me is I don't like draw them out beforehand. I know where I want to go. I know what I'm trying to incorporate, and it's up to me to design the drills as we go. So I don't do a lot of drills the same, like I don't do the same drills often. There's always different layers and different aspects, and I don't do the games the same way all the time. I create this dynamic thing, and one of the reasons why is because I want to be able to adapt and adjust and change and incorporate different elements. And I think that that's really important, and that's always been a big part of my process, particularly the last 12 to 15 years. It's really been a big part of my process. And so as I'm out there, I got a lot of things, a lot of factors, and a lot of considerations that go into how I set up that drill and why and where I'm trying to go, and then building the infrastructure beforehand between the game, the analysis of the player, and teaching the player how to build their own player development structure and be able to recognize things no different than what that one or two top player would do on his own, where he would be like watching Nathan McKinnon the night before, and he'd be with his buddies going, man, did you see that play? That was sick. And then he's like describing it in the dressing room, and then he goes on the ice before the practice starts, and you see him messing around with it. Next thing you know, the first drill, the shooter drill comes around. He gets that first puck. What do you think he's doing? Yeah, he's doing it. That's personal game structure. That's personal game structure. This is the same thing, but it's through the education of the player, through the group. We're collaborating together, so he doesn't feel like he's doing it on his own. That's personal game structure, and that's episode 4.